Hey guys, Michael Corsentino here with the companion video for my June lighting column in Shutter Magazine. This month I wanted to talk to you guys about specialty lighting equipment, both lights as well as light modifiers. So it's kind of a category in and of itself, unto itself. Specialty lights and specialty modifiers, as their name would imply, they do something that other tools can't, right? So because of that, consequently, they are a little bit more expensive, and some of them are very niche in what they can do, right? So there's different criteria, like when you're bringing in just an octabank or an umbrella or whatever, or a strobe or a speed light or whatever the tool might be. The criteria for those tools is going to be a little bit different because they're more general purpose tools, right? With specialty tools, because their price is different, because they are kind of specific in their applications, they have different criteria, and there are different things that I'm looking for and that I would recommend that you look for when you're considering one of these tools. So there are basically two different categories of criteria that I look for. And as I said in the article, one of the first things is going to be, the first thing that I want a specialty tool to do is it's either got to do something that none of the other tools that I have in my studio or at my disposal can do, and that would be number one. Or number two, it has to replace several tools that I have, right? And do several things. It has to be able to do several things with one tool, thereby replacing a number of tools with that one tool, right? So finding a tool that can do both can be kind of tricky. So I pulled out some of the usual suspects here as an example, and these are just some of the tools that I work with. But like, for example, let's say ring flash. We've got the ring flash up here. We've got the zoom spot, and we've got the Fresnel. Now, each of those is a very kind of specific tool. It does very specific things, and you could argue that it's kind of a very niche application tool that, for lack of a better term, and with no disrespect meant to these tools, you could sort of call it a one-trick pony because it's going to yield a very specific and distinctive kind of look, right? And then there is a tool that I started working with lately, and that is, you see it here on the screen here, the Braun Color Para. And this would be true of all paras because they're very unique in a certain respect, and we're going to dig in and talk about why that is. But this is a really interesting tool because it does both of these things, right? So it does things that none of my other tools can do, first of all, and it also replaces multiple tools in my studio. And that's good news because it is not inexpensive, right? So we're going to look at it and dig more deeply into what we can do with this. And I have a whole bunch of examples of images that I made and the different qualities of light that you can get out of it. And that's really the focus of the article, is just the myriad kind of looks that you can get using this one tool, which is really cool. So I want to say right up front that I understand that this tool is not for everyone. I understand that it might not be the right, in the budget that you're at right now in your business. It might be a goal for you, something that you're interested in working with. That said, when I first started out, certainly this was not a tool that was on my radar that I could work with, but I was able to rent them at rental houses, which I would encourage you to do. I wouldn't be intimidated by that. You can definitely, like I say, you can definitely rent with them. You can definitely work with them. And I've covered many different kinds of tools. So I'm hoping that this is not in any way meant, like I say, to be elitist. It's just one of the tools that I work with. I've written articles on umbrellas. I've written articles on speed lights. I've written articles on very inexpensive tools. But, this is in the sort of palette of tools that is used by professional photographers, by commercial photographers. So I think it's fair game to talk about it. And again, maybe it's not something that you're working with right now, but maybe it's something that is a goal. I know that it was for me, and it is definitely something that you can get your hands on and work with without necessarily having to have the budget to buy. You can rent one fairly inexpensively at a local rental house and go shoot with it, and I think you'll be as excited by the possibilities of this tool as I am. Okay, so here is a look at the Braun Color Para 133. Now there are a whole range of sizes that you can get with Para. The 133 is kind of a mid-size, good for portrait, good for fashion, good for some full length. There are larger ones, but this is the one that I chose to invest in because it was kind of suits all the various different needs that I have. So let's talk about what makes this so unique. You're looking at it and you could say, oh, you could easily say, well, what's the point? It's just an umbrella. Well, you would be right that it is an umbrella. However, it's got some really unique properties and characteristics that make it a different animal from other umbrellas. Okay, first of all, it's got these. Let me see if I have a little markup layer here. Okay, great. So it's got the silver interior and it's got 24 facets. So it's going to create a really unique catch light. And I'm going to give you an example of that catch light later on down the line in some of the slides that I have for you. It also has this unique, what's known as a parabola shape. It's a true parabolic shape. And what that means is that that shape is going to make the light very efficient. Okay, and it's going to give the light a throw and a punch and a characteristic that an umbrella, let's say, that was not a parabolic will not have. Okay, so you can see here that it's got a very, very narrow end here and a very wide opening at the front, right? So those are just a few of the things, but more importantly, and this is the big sort of point of differentiation with this tool and what makes it so unique, is that you can see here on the picture on the right here that there is this rod coming through the center of it, and there's a Braun color light head here. Now you can use different kinds of lights. There are adapters. Right now it's just pictured with a Braun color strobe. And this rod is called the focusing tube. And what this really unique kind of arrangement does is it allows you, and here you can see a picture of it from the side, is it allows you to take this entire assembly, and your light would be here, right? And slide it forward and back from all the way from here in the back of the umbrella all the way to the front of the umbrella, right? So doing that is going to give you a very different quality of light. So you can take it anywhere from the front to anywhere all the way through to the back. And all those positions are going to give you varying qualities of light. At its frontmost position, it's going to give you a really soft, what Braun color would call a defocused light, okay, in their parlance. And in the back, it's going to give you a very focused light. So in the back, you're going to see all of this area is going to be very, very bright. And then there's going to be a lot of fall off here. Whereas if your strobe and your head are up here on the front, and forgive me for all this kind of getting messy, but if your light is up here in the front, if your strobe is up here in the front, then you're going to have a lot of even coverage all the way through here, and that is going to result in a very soft quality of light. Now you can further soften it with diffusion panels, which I've done in the third look that I'm going to show you guys. So there again, you're seeing, even when I'm just talking about this, that there are just a whole number of looks that you can get from this one tool, which is super important when you're talking about a tool that is this kind of investment, right? All right, so let's move on to our first look and talk about how that was created. So here I've started off with a classic kind of fashion beauty look, and I wanted to create something really punchy and really strong. So what I did was I sort of started off with a clamshell lighting style, which is just a basic over and under lighting. So you can see here, and the diagram just shows kind of your average octabank, but just picture that this is a para, and that there is no front-facing diffusion as there is shown here. And what I've done is I've used a reflector underneath, a triflector, to pop light back in, to fill light back in, and that's why it's the clamshell lighting style, because it's over and under. You've got a key light above, and you've got a reflector underneath, and you could also use another light, but in this case I'm using a reflector, and that is bouncing light back up into my subject from the key light, right? And the key light is the Para 133, and the strobe is positioned all the way, sorry, that's wrong. The strobe is positioned all the way in the back, okay? So because of that, I'm getting all this focused light from the back, and it's creating this very edgy, specular, punchy, hard light. You can see here the signature catch light that you get from the Para. I should have mentioned that as one of the signature characteristics because of the, oh, I think I did. Yeah, that is one of the signature characteristics, and that's something that people are really kind of go bananas for, myself included. It gives you a really cool catch light, and you've seen this catch light a million times in fashion and commercial images, and probably wondered, like I did, how did they create that? And so now you know it's kind of a signature Para look, right? So you can see here the look that I'm getting with this lighting setup, and it's a very punchy, very hard, very specular, but I love this look. I mean, it's definitely a real kind of fashion look, but there are all sorts of other things that I can do with this one tool, which is what makes it so cool, okay? And like any modifier, I don't want, some of the things that we're going to talk about will apply to other modifiers. Like we're going to talk about direction of light, we're going to talk about diffusion. Those things you can use, you can apply these same techniques to other modifiers. You don't necessarily need to have this, but there'll be some other things that you can carry over, things we'll talk about in this presentation that you can carry over with other modifiers. Okay, so big takeaway from this setup is light head is all the way in the back. So I don't need to necessarily, with this tool, I don't need to move my light 15 feet back in order to get this really, kind of punchy specular light. I can just do that with the box by moving the position of the light inside the umbrella, right? Okay, so that is our first look. Now let's look to move on to our second look. So for this look, I wanted something softer. I wanted something more editorial looking. I wanted something that was going to really show off that highlight, that catch light in the eyes, and be less brassy, less punchy, right? And be a very soft kind of beauty fashion look, more portrait, editorial, portrait fashion kind of thing. And you can see here that it's a different lighting look. It's a different feel than that first image, okay? So one of the first things that I did was I moved the entire arrangement, the reflector, the fill reflector, I moved the light, the Para, I moved everything over here, camera right, okay, from my model. And I had my model turn into the light, okay? And I also, and again, just pretend that this diffusion that you're seeing here on the front is not there. Previously I had the light in the back of the softbox, in the back of the Para, all the way positioned using that focusing rod, moving the light all the way to the back. Now I'm doing the opposite. I've taken that focusing rod and I've moved the light all the way to the front, okay, to the widest part of the Para. And that is giving me this gorgeous defocused light, right, giving this really soft, it's not diffuse because I'm not using a diffuser, but it's this very much soft, broad quality of light. Yet it still has some of that crispness, it still has some of that specularity, but it's a lot less. I mean, it is a silver interior, but it's a lot less specular just by virtue of the position of the light. And of course, again, I can do things to reduce that specularity. I can do things to make it even softer, and we'll do some of that in our third and final look. All right. So talked about the catch light. I do want to show you that catch light, so I have a detail for you because here we're really going to get to see how beautiful that catch light is in this image, right? So here you go. So you can see this signature 24 silver faceted catch light that you get with this modifier. It's just, it's really it's hard to compare. There are not many other tools out there that will give you this and that will allow you the variety of catch lights that you can get. You can also do a very pinpoint kind of catch light when you have the strobe all the way at the back of the Para. All right. So let's move on to our third look. So I wanted to give you a behind the scenes shot here as well. Everybody loves a little BTS. So here you can see I'm sort of dialing in what the look for the third look is going to be. And for that look, I wanted an editorial portrait. I wanted to really try and see what the softest light that I could possibly get out of this, out of the Para was. I'm using, now of course I could have gone softer, but I wanted to strike a middle ground, and I'll explain to you what my thinking was there. With this softbox, there are with the Para, there are 3 different diffusion panels that you can get, number 1, 2, and 3. And of course, they're going to cut a different amount of light, but they're also going to give you a different look. They're going to give you a different catch light. They're going to give you a different amount of specularity. So what I wanted to do was strike a balance. What I did not want to do is turn the para into just your everyday octabank, which if I put a number 3 on there, it was going to cut the catch light. It was going to really like knock out all the specularity from the silver interior. I wasn't going to get any of that silver facet catch light in the eyes. So I'd really be sort of short-changing or short-cutting the short-circuiting the characteristics that are so near and dear to those of us who like the para, right? So I struck a middle ground and I went for the number 2 diffusion, and that gave me a really nice soft editorial look, the softest look out of the bunch that you've seen. We'll see that in a minute, but it didn't diffuse those kind of cool things about the para, that catch light and that little bit of crispness that I really like. All right. So again, here you can see that I've taken everything and I've moved it to the side. Before I had a very frontal light with no direction. Now I've got direction. I've introduced shadow as I didn't. Well, this was all from the last shot. I introduced shadow. Let's just go back to that for a minute. Right, so you can see here I've introduced shadow just by moving the light. So again, that's going to be one of those things that you're going to apply to any light modifier. Any time that you move your light from right in front of your model for, let's say, a beauty clamshell kind of paramount light scenario, and then you move that light to either side, you're going to introduce shadow. And for me, that's sort of an editorial kind of look, fashion look, and I love that look. And also very at home in portraits, etc. So let's go back to our here we go. Yep. All right, so back to our BTS. So you can see here that, again, I'm getting it dialed in. This was not exactly the setup that I used for the final because I modified a few things and I want to talk about that. So right here you can see that I've got this Sunbounce reflector panel, and I'm using that to provide a kicker light here. I always try and I start out with reflectors because they're going to be the most subtle and they're not going to hit my subject over the head. They're not going to hit the image over the head with too much light, right? So it's really easy to throw a million lights at something, but I really try and see what I can accomplish with one light when possible, all right? So I started out with that reflector. Now, it didn't give me quite enough light. I wasn't getting the illumination that I wanted. So in the end, I replaced that with an Ellen Chrome large strip bank with a Light Tools grid, and you're seeing that here. Okay, so that is in the same position that this Sunbounce reflector is in. So that went away, and this came in. All right. I did, however, keep this Sunbounce reflector. This is a micro mini on a C-stand, and that is just providing some fill from this light, boink, and bouncing back onto the shadowed side of the face. So it's just filling in a little bit, and you'll see that it just opens things up a little bit. Now, of course, I had to really sort of noodle this position of this, okay, front to back from here to here, okay, and again, sorry for this getting messy. I had to move this back and forth relative to the position of my model to kind of modulate how much or how little fill light I was getting, all right? So that's really key. You're really going to have to play with it and season it to taste, okay? Also, the same thing is true of this reflector down here, the fill reflector. I have to, position it up or down and kind of, make sure that it's obviously out of the frame from where I'm, what I'm shooting, but that I'm getting enough fill to satisfy what I want to kind of open up shadows under the neck and under the eyes, okay? And also maybe to illuminate some of the fabric on here, depending on how wide you're shooting. All right. Now, one of the other things that you're going to see here that I did not address in the article, which is what's cool about the videos, is I can talk a little bit more in depth about some of the things that I'm doing and kind of give you a little value add, is I'm using this tool back here, and this is called a net. Okay, now what a net is, you guys may be familiar with flags. A flag is going to block light entirely, but what a net is going to do is a net is going to allow just some of the light through. Not going to block all of it, but it's going to block some of it. And there are different densities of nets that you can get. Westcott makes a great little net set, and that's where this is from. And so I'm using the green. Forgive me, I don't know what the rating is on it, but it blocked enough light to satisfy my needs. And basically why I'm using it is because I want to reduce the light on her chest and shoulder, right? Those areas can be really, really hot when you're working with, someone when there's a lot of skin in your images, and then, you go into, you look at your finals and you're trying to retouch and you're like, oh my God, the skin's all blown out and it's taking away all the attention. You know, everybody, the eye is going right to the skin, and it's not what you want. So if you're working with someone with, you know, bright clothing, you know, or a lot of skin exposed, nets are fantastic. They're really going to help you kind of shape and control your light. So I recommend that. And again, sorry if this is looking like a football diagram, but I just wanted to kind of really give you the benefit of everything that I've got going on here and the thought process that went into it. All right. So let me show you the result of this. This is going to be the final, number 3. Look number 3, the softest look out of the bunch using the Power 133. And now in this one, I've got the number 2 diffusion panel on the front. I've got the light all the way at the front, the strobe all the way at the front, so that focusing tube is moved all the way to the front. I've got the triflector fill panel here, providing fill light up to my model. I've got the sun bounce micro mini here, and that is filling in the shadowed side of her face. And I've got this kicker light, which is giving me this, right, which is helping me all this. And it's also helping the clothing, because all of this is especially true when you're working with a dark background. This was the black garments, the black pants, the black top, they were all just like disappearing into the black background. So that was really helpful. So you can see, you know, we're able to create some pretty, you know, different looks all at the same time. And I'm going to show you a slide of everything, all the different looks together. But I want to talk first about the reflectors that we're using for fill reflectors. Okay, so when it comes to fill reflectors, you have lots of different choices. You can just use a standard reflector. I'm partial to these reflectors that allow you to have 3 different surfaces, or the curved surface. So for the shoot that we looked at today, you're seeing me using the Westcott Triflector, and that is, I believe, no longer manufactured. However, you can find them used. But, caveat, I am now more favorable to the Lasolite Triflector. Same name, different look. And you can see here the reason why is because it's got curved, it's got a curved shape to it, right? Kind of a teardrop shape to each of the 3 positions. And the cool thing about these is you can position them, you can use them flat, you can bring up more light on one side of the face, or less light and more light on the other side, or have them equal. So it gives you a tremendous amount of control and flexibility. You can reverse them for, you know, silver or white. So I love the catch light specifically that you get from this, rather than having a sort of a hard squared off catch light, which you'd have with the Westcott Triflector. With the Lasolite, you're going to have a more curved kind of catch light. And then of course there is the Westcott Eyelighter, which I also have, which is going to give you a crescent shaped catch light in the lower part of the eye, which sometimes I use as well. Okay, so the thing that you want to think about when you're choosing your fill reflectors is twofold. You're going to want to think about the catch light that they're going to create, and you're going to want to think about where they're putting the light. And something like a triflector is really going to allow me to control exactly how much and where that light is falling, where an eyelighter is great and I love it, but I'm sort of locked into where the light is when I use it. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at all 3 of the looks together and see what we're able to create with just one tool. And here we have the whole shooting match. So here are looks 1, 2, and 3. So again, just to reiterate, we're starting off with look number 1 right here. Let me get my drawing back. Okay, so look number 1 here, and that is going to be the most contrasty look. For that one, I've got my strobe all the way in the back of the para, and that is giving me this really cool punchy look. You can see here the awesome catch light in the glasses. Number 2, I wanted a softer look. So what I've done is I wanted a more editorial look with some shadow and some dimension. So I've moved my para and my reflector, my fill reflector, to the right side, camera right. And I've moved the strobe all the way to the front of the para, which is giving me a much softer quality of light, because it's a defocused light as opposed to look 1, which is a focused light, to use Braun Colors terminology. And look number 3, where I've gone for a still softer look by putting a diffusion panel number 2 on the on the front of the para in order to really further accentuate that soft quality. I've left the strobe in exactly the same position all the way at the front of the para's opening, and so I've really heightened that soft effect. I've also brought in a fill reflector on the camera left in order to provide some fill on the left side of the model's face, because I didn't want it as shadowy as you can see in number 2, right? And I brought in a kicker light in order to provide some separation from the background and to give me a little bit of accent light on the back of my model, Cat, who is amazing, by the way. So that's it. That's going to wrap it up. That's our 3 looks with the Para 133. I encourage you guys to go out and get your hands on some specialty tools, whether it's this or any other tool. They're really going to allow you to do some fun and creative things and take your lighting game and creativity to the next level. So that's going to wrap it up for this month. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next month. Until that time, this is Michael Corsentino for Shutter Magazine.